Charlotte Martinez stands in the doorway of her small apartment, one hand pressed against the frame, the other cradling her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, alone. The November rain taps against the window like impatient fingers, and she stares at the empty crib in the corner of the living room, a crib she assembled herself, her hands shaking with each bolt she tightened. She thinks about last Thanksgiving, the announcement, the laughter, the humiliation. She thinks about the medical reports Henry threw on the table like accusations, and she thinks about the truth that came too late to save anything. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back. Back to when Charlotte Martinez believed in fairy tales. Charlotte grew up knowing loss. At 16, a car crash stole both her parents in a single brutal moment. One phone call, one rainy night, and suddenly she was alone. The state placed her in a group home, not the kind you see in movies with caring house mothers and warm cookies. This was industrial tile floors, 3 girls to a room, and counselors who looked through you rather than at you. She learned to be invisible, to need nothing, to expect less. Charlotte worked her way through community college, freelancing as a graphic designer, taking any job that paid. Website banners, logo redesigns, birthday party invitations. She lived in a studio apartment that smelled like the Chinese restaurant downstairs and saved every dollar she could. She never asked for help, because who would she ask? Then, at 24, she met Henry Miller at a networking event for small business owners. He was 28, confident in a navy suit that fit perfectly, and he smiled at her like she was the only person in the room. Henry owned a commercial real estate firm, 3 offices across Illinois. Money, stability, security, everything Charlotte had never had. "You design these?" Henry asked, looking at her portfolio on her laptop. His cologne was subtle, expensive. "These are incredible." Charlotte felt her face warm. "Just freelance stuff. Nothing major." "No." Henry tapped the screen. "This is major. You have an eye for this. You shouldn't be underselling yourself." That was Henry. He saw potential in her when she couldn't see it herself. They dated for 8 months. Henry took her to restaurants with cloth napkins and menus without prices. He introduced her to his mother, Grace Miller, an elegant woman in her late 50s with silver hair always pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that assessed Charlotte like an accountant reviewing spreadsheets. "So you're an orphan," Grace said over tea. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, ma'am." "And you work as a freelancer?" "Graphic design." "Yes." Grace sipped her tea, said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. Henry proposed on a Saturday morning in Grant Park. Simple, sweet, a vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. Charlotte cried, actually cried, because for the first time since she was 16, she felt like she belonged somewhere, to someone. They married in a small ceremony. Henry's family filled one side of the venue. Charlotte's side was nearly empty. Just 2 friends from college and her old caseworker, Mrs. Chen, who cried harder than anyone. The first year of marriage was good. Mostly good. Henry worked long hours, often coming home after 9, smelling like coffee and stress. Charlotte worked from their home office, building her client list, trying to prove to Grace that she wasn't just some charity case Henry had rescued. But there was something, a small thing that grew larger with each passing month. They didn't get pregnant. Not that they were trying aggressively, but they weren't preventing it either. And as months turned into a year, Charlotte noticed Henry's mother mentioning it more frequently. "Any news?" Grace would ask during Sunday dinners, her gaze pointed. "Not yet, Mom," Henry would say, squeezing Charlotte's hand under the table. "Well, you're not getting any younger. Either of you." Charlotte smiled through gritted teeth. She wanted to scream that she was only 25, that they had time, but she didn't. because Grace Miller had a way of making you feel like you were always one wrong word away from disappointing her. 3 months into the marriage, Henry went quiet for a week, distant. He'd stare at his phone during dinner, barely touching his food. Charlotte asked twice if something was wrong. He said it was work stress, a deal falling through. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? What Charlotte didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Henry had gone to a doctor, not their family physician, a specialist in downtown Chicago, a fertility clinic. He'd requested a semen analysis, privately, without telling anyone. And when the results came back, Henry Miller sat in his car in the clinic parking lot and stared at the paper in his hands for 45 minutes. Azoospermia. No viable sperm detected. Patient is sterile. He didn't tell Charlotte. He folded the report, put it in his office safe, and locked the door on that particular truth. For 9 more months. Fast forward to November, Thanksgiving week. Charlotte had been feeling off for weeks, exhausted, nauseous in the mornings. Her period was late, very late. She bought 3 pregnancy tests from 3 different drugstores, too superstitious to buy them all at once. All 3 came back positive. She sat on the bathroom floor, staring at those 2 pink lines, and for the first time in years, she let herself feel pure, uncomplicated joy. A baby. She was going to have a baby. She and Henry were going to be parents. She wanted to tell him immediately. But Thanksgiving dinner was in 2 days, and all of Henry's family would be there. His mother, his 2 sisters, their husbands, the kids. It would be perfect, a moment everyone would remember. Charlotte bought a onesie that said, "Thankful for me," and wrapped it in tissue paper. She planned it carefully. After dinner, during dessert, she'd hand Grace the box, let her open it, watch the realization spread across the room. She could already see Henry's face, the shock, the happiness, the way he'd pull her into his arms and spin her around. It was going to be perfect. Thanksgiving dinner at the Miller house was always formal. Grace didn't believe in paper plates or plastic utensils. Everything was crystal and china, with cloth napkins folded into neat triangles. The dining room smelled like turkey and rosemary, and Henry's sisters were already arguing about whose cranberry sauce recipe was better. Charlotte wore a cream sweater and dark jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. She felt nervous. Good nervous. The kind of nervous that comes before something wonderful. "Charlotte, you look pale," Grace observed from the head of the table. "Are you feeling well?" "I'm fine," Charlotte said, smiling. "Just excited." Henry sat beside her, his hand resting on her knee under the table. He seemed tense, but she attributed it to work. He'd been on edge all week about a property deal in Naperville. They ate turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes with marshmallows that Grace claimed were too sweet but ate anyway. Charlotte barely tasted anything. Her stomach was a knot of anticipation. Finally, dessert, pumpkin pie, apple pie, coffee. Charlotte cleared her throat. "Actually, before we dig in, I have something I want to share." The table quieted. All eyes turned to her. She pulled out the small wrapped box and handed it to Grace. "For you." Grace raised an eyebrow. "It's not my birthday." "I know. Just open it." Grace unwrapped the tissue paper slowly, methodically. She lifted the tiny onesie, held it up, read the words. Her expression didn't change. But something shifted in her eyes, something Charlotte couldn't quite read. "I'm pregnant," Charlotte said, her voice trembling with happiness. "We're having a baby." Silence. Then Henry laughed. Not a joyful laugh. A bitter, hollow sound that made Charlotte's skin prickle. "That's impossible," Henry said. Charlotte turned to him, confused. "What?" "I said that's impossible." Henry's voice was loud now, sharp. "I'm sterile, Charlotte. I had tests done, months ago. There's no way that baby is mine." The room went cold. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. Charlotte felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" Henry stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. A PDF document. Medical letterhead. 3 months after we got married, I had a semen analysis done, Henry said, his voice shaking with rage. The results were clear. Azoospermia, 0 sperm count. I'm sterile, Charlotte, completely sterile. So you want to tell me, in front of my entire family, whose baby you're actually carrying? Before we continue, if you're hooked on this story, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I promise you, this twist gets even crazier. And drop your city in the comments. I want to know where you're all watching from. All right, let's get back to it. Charlotte's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her brain couldn't process what was happening. The room spun. Henry, I don't understand, she managed. There's no one else. There's never been anyone else. Don't lie to me! Henry slammed his hand on the table. Glasses rattled. I have the proof right here. Medical documentation. You want to explain how you're pregnant when I can't have kids? Tears burned Charlotte's eyes. I don't know. I don't know how, but I swear to you. Swear? Henry's laugh was cruel. You swear? Like your vows meant anything? Grace stood slowly, her face a mask of controlled fury. Henry, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Henry's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone here needs to know what kind of woman I married. What kind of person would do this? Charlotte looked around the table. Henry's sisters stared at her with open disgust. Their husbands wouldn't meet her eyes. The children had been ushered into the other room, but she could hear their confused whispers. I haven't cheated on you, Charlotte said, her voice breaking. I love you. This baby is yours. It has to be. There's no other explanation. The explanation is obvious, Henry said coldly. You're a liar and a cheat, and I want you out of my house. Henry, get out. His voice was ice. Pack your things. Get out of my house. We're done. Charlotte stood on shaking legs. The room tilted. She reached for the table to steady herself, but Henry grabbed her wrist, not hard, but firm. Now, he said. She pulled her arm free and walked out. No one followed her. No one said a word in her defense. In the foyer, Charlotte grabbed her coat with trembling hands. She could hear low voices from the dining room. Someone was crying. Someone else was angry. She stepped out into the November cold, closed the door behind her, and stood on the porch of what had been her home for the past year. Then she vomited into the bushes. Charlotte stayed in a budget inn for 3 nights, $49 per night. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach, and the heater rattled like something was dying inside it. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just stared at the water-stained ceiling and tried to make sense of what had happened. Her phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from Henry's sisters, voicemails from his mother. None of them kind. None of them asking her side of the story. You should be ashamed. How could you do this to him? Gold digger. We always knew. On the 4th day, a courier delivered divorce papers to the motel. Henry had filed already, fast, efficient. He'd hired Preston and Associates, the best family law firm in Chicago, the kind that charged $800 an hour and won cases before they went to trial. Charlotte had $1,600 in her checking account. She found a lawyer through a legal aid clinic. A tired-looking woman named Sandra Barnes, who worked out of a strip mall office and drank coffee from a travel mug that said, I can't, I have court. Look, Sandra said, scanning the divorce petition. I'm going to be straight with you. Henry Miller has money, connections. His lawyer is going to bury us in motions and discovery. Your best bet is to agree to a quick settlement and move on. I didn't cheat, Charlotte said. That baby is his. Sandra looked at her over her reading glasses. Do you have proof? Proof? I know it's his. I haven't been with anyone else. That's not proof. That's a statement. He has a medical document saying he's sterile. Unless you can explain how you're pregnant, no judge is going to rule in your favor. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. So what do I do? We wait for the baby to be born. Request a paternity test. But Charlotte, Sandra's voice softened. Even if the test proves he's the father, you're looking at a long legal battle. And Henry has the resources to drag this out for years. You need to think about whether you can handle that. Charlotte thought about the motel room, the cigarette smell, the rattling heater. I don't have a choice, she said quietly. Charlotte moved into a studio apartment in a part of Chicago that real estate agents called up and coming and everyone else called sketchy. Rent was $800 a month. The building had no elevator. Her apartment was on the 4th floor. She took every freelance job she could find, logo designs, website mock-ups, social media graphics. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14, her laptop balanced on her growing belly. The divorce wasn't finalized. Henry's lawyers argued that paternity needed to be established before any settlement could be reached. They requested the court-ordered DNA testing immediately after birth. Charlotte agreed. What else could she do? Money was tight. Impossibly tight. She skipped meals, wore the same 3 maternity outfits on rotation, canceled her phone plan and switched to a prepaid service. She walked everywhere to save on bus fare, even as her belly grew heavier and her back ached with each step. She was alone, completely alone, or so she thought. It was a Tuesday afternoon in January when someone knocked on Charlotte's apartment door. She opened it cautiously, leaving the chain lock engaged. Grace Miller stood in the hallway, perfectly composed in a camel-colored coat and leather gloves. "May I come in?" Grace asked. Charlotte stared. "Why are you here?" "To talk. Please." Charlotte hesitated, then unlatched the chain. Grace stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the cramped studio, the futon that doubled as a bed, the card table that served as a desk, the kitchenette with its single-burner stove. "Tea?" Charlotte offered, because she didn't know what else to say. "Please." They sat across from each other, 2 women who'd never quite understood each other holding mismatched mugs. "How are you feeling?" Grace asked. "Pregnant, exhausted, broke." Charlotte didn't see the point in sugarcoating it. Grace nodded. "Henry is angry." "I know. He feels betrayed." "He betrayed himself," Charlotte said quietly. "I didn't cheat on him. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know why he thinks I did, but I didn't." Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I believe you." Charlotte's head snapped up. "What?" "I believe you didn't cheat." Grace set down her mug. "You're not the type. I've known that from the beginning. You don't have the personality for deception." It wasn't exactly a compliment, but coming from Grace Miller, it was something. "Then why?" "Because Henry has the medical report," Grace interrupted. "And medical reports don't lie, do they?" The question hung between them. "I don't know," Charlotte whispered. "I don't understand any of this." Grace stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. "The baby is due in April?" "Late April, yes. I'll check in on you, make sure you're managing." "Why?" Charlotte's voice broke. "Your son hates me. Your family thinks You're carrying my grandchild," Grace said simply. "Whatever else is true, that matters." Then she left. Grace visited twice more before the baby was born. She brought groceries, practical things, rice, beans, canned soup, prenatal vitamins. She didn't stay long, didn't ask invasive questions, just checked that Charlotte was still breathing, still functioning. It was the closest thing to family Charlotte had felt since she was 16. In April, 2 weeks before her due date, Charlotte went into labor at 3 a.m. She called an Uber to the hospital because she had no one else to call. labored alone in a room with pale green walls and a TV playing infomercials on mute. 14 hours later, she gave birth to a boy, 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect, screaming and pink and alive. The nurse placed him on her chest, and Charlotte looked down at his tiny, scrunched face and felt something crack open inside her, something that had been locked away since her parents died. Love, pure and absolute and terrifying. "What's his name?" the nurse asked. Charlotte hadn't decided. She'd been too scared to pick a name, as if naming him would make everything more real. She thought about her father, Michael, her mother, Rose. "Elijah," she said. "His name is Elijah." The court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for when Elijah was 2 weeks old. Henry didn't come to the appointment. He sent a representative from his legal team, a paralegal named Kevin, who looked barely old enough to shave and who avoided eye contact while a technician swabbed the inside of Elijah's tiny mouth. Charlotte held her son while they took the sample. He didn't cry, just blinked up at her with dark eyes that looked exactly like Henry's. The results took 10 days. When Sandra called, her voice was strange, careful. "Charlotte, I need you to sit down." Charlotte was already sitting. Elijah was asleep in a bassinet beside her, one fist curled against his cheek. "Okay," she said. "The paternity test came back. Elijah is Henry's biological son, 99.99% certainty." Charlotte exhaled. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt lightheaded. "So he's... but there's more." Sandra's tone shifted. "Henry's lawyers are requesting a second test. On Henry." "What?" "The judge ordered Henry to submit to a fertility test. A new one, given the discrepancy." Charlotte's heart pounded. "When?" "It's already done. We're waiting for results." The second set of results came back 3 weeks later. Henry Miller was not sterile. His sperm count was normal, healthy, well within the range for natural conception. The initial test, the one from 3 months into their marriage, had been wrong. A lab error, a mislabeling of samples. An investigation revealed that the fertility clinic had mixed up results between 2 patients on the same day. Henry had received another man's results. For over a year, Henry Miller had believed a lie. Charlotte sat in Sandra's office, holding the report in shaking hands. "So he..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "He was never sterile," Sandra said. "Elijah is his son. You never cheated. Everything he accused you of was based on a mistake." Grace nodded slowly as if she'd expected this answer. She looked down at Elijah, traced one finger along his tiny hand. "As Henry's mother," Grace said carefully, "I should tell you to give him another chance, to go home, to let him make this right." Charlotte waited. "But as a mother to you," Grace continued, her voice softer now, "I'm going to tell you to run. And if you ever go back to him, I'll never forgive you." Charlotte felt tears sting her eyes. "Why?" "Because what he did to you was unforgivable. Mistake or not, he should have trusted you. He should have asked. He should have protected you." Grace looked up, her expression fierce. "My son was raised better than that. And the fact that he failed you so completely tells me he's not ready to be the husband you deserve." Charlotte wiped her eyes. "What about Elijah?" "Elijah needs his father, but you can give him that without sacrificing yourself." Grace handed the baby back to Charlotte. "You can co-parent. You can be civil. But you don't owe Henry your forgiveness. You don't owe him your trust. Not after what he did. What if he tries to fight for custody?" Grace's smile was thin. "Then he'll have to go through me, and I promise you, Charlotte, he won't win that fight." The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Charlotte waived all claims to Henry's property and assets. She signed documents renouncing any right to his wealth, his houses, his business holdings. She wanted nothing from him except the freedom to raise her son in peace. Henry's lawyers tried to argue, tried to insist on a settlement, spousal support, property division. Charlotte refused everything. "I don't want his money," she told Sandra. "I just want to be done." In the end, they agreed on a custody arrangement, joint legal custody. Charlotte had primary physical custody. Henry got Elijah every other weekend and one evening a week. It was civil, distant, functional. And it broke something in Henry that Charlotte could see but couldn't quite name. Henry tried. God, he tried. At first, it was an apology. Long, rambling voicemails left at midnight, his voice thick with regret. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to. I should have trusted you. I should have asked. I was angry and scared and stupid, and I hurt you in ways I can't take back. But please give me a chance to fix this." Charlotte listened to each message once, then deleted it. Then came the gestures. Flowers delivered to her apartment, gift baskets, a package containing a check for $50,000 with a note. "For Elijah, for whatever he needs." She sent the check back. Henry showed up to every custody exchange early. He brought coffee for Charlotte, the way she used to like it, with cream and one sugar, and she accepted it with a polite thank you and threw it away when he left. He asked to extend his visitation time, asked if he could come to doctor's appointments, asked if they could do family dinners so Elijah could see them together. Charlotte said no. Gently, firmly, no. "Why won't you let me try?" Henry asked one evening, standing in her doorway while she held Elijah on her hip. The baby was 8 months old now, chubby and happy, reaching for his father with a delighted squeal. "Because you can't rebuild trust overnight," Charlotte said quietly. "You can't fix this with apologies and coffee and money. You broke something, Henry, and I don't know if it can be fixed at all." Henry's face crumpled. "What do I have to do?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. That's the point." She closed the door. But here's the thing about broken trust. It's not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about the small, consistent things. Henry started showing up on time, every time, never late, never with an excuse. He learned Elijah's routines, when he napped, what songs he liked, which foods made him smile and which made him scrunch his nose in disgust. He didn't push Charlotte for anything, didn't ask for more time or second chances, just showed up, took his son, brought him back. He sent child support payments on the 1st of every month. Not the minimum, not what the court ordered, but more. Enough that Charlotte could quit 2 of her freelance clients and spend more time with Elijah. He never missed a birthday, never forgot a milestone. When Elijah took his first steps at Grace's house during a visit, Henry called Charlotte immediately. "He walked," Henry said, his voice shaking with joy. "Charlie, he walked." Charlie. He hadn't called her that in 2 years. "That's wonderful," Charlotte said, and meant it. Grace became a fixture in Charlotte's life in a way she'd never been during the marriage. She visited 3 times a week, brought groceries, played with Elijah. Sometimes she just sat in the apartment reading a book while Charlotte worked, a silent presence that somehow made everything feel less lonely. "You're different now," Grace said one afternoon while Elijah napped. "Stronger." Charlotte considered this. "I don't feel stronger. I feel tired." "Strength and exhaustion aren't mutually exclusive." Grace poured them both tea. "You've built a life for yourself and your son without anyone's help. That's not weakness. I had your help. Only a little. The rest was you." Charlotte smiled. "Why do you come here? Really?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "Because you remind me of myself. When I had Henry, his father was not present, not in the ways that mattered. I raised Henry mostly alone. And I see you doing the same thing. Alone. Proud. Terrified. And I think, if someone had shown up for me back then, maybe things would have been easier. So you're showing up for me?" "Yes. Thank you," Charlotte said quietly. "For everything." Grace reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Charlotte. Don't let anyone, not even my son, make you forget that." Elijah turned 3 in April. Charlotte threw a small party in a park near her apartment. Balloons, cake. A handful of kids from Elijah's daycare and their parents. Grace came, of course, and Henry. Henry brought a present, a wooden train set he'd spent weeks researching because Elijah was obsessed with trains. He sat on a park bench, watching Charlotte light candles on the cake, watching Elijah clap his hands with joy, and something in his chest ached. He'd missed so much. Not because Charlotte kept him away. She hadn't. She'd been fair. More than fair. But because the distance between them was a gulf he didn't know how to cross. After the party, after the guests left, Henry helped Charlotte pack up. They worked in silence, folding the tablecloth, tossing paper plates into garbage bags. "Charlie," Henry said finally. She looked up, waited. "I know I don't deserve to ask. I know I've lost any right to this, but is there any chance? Any chance at all that someday—" "I don't know," Charlotte interrupted. Not unkindly, just honestly. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again, Henry. I don't know if we can be more than what we are now." "What are we now?" "Co-parents. People who love the same little boy. People who are trying to do right by him." Henry nodded, swallowed hard. "That's enough," he said. "If that's all I get, then that's enough." But his eyes said otherwise. It's been 3 years now. Charlotte still lives in the same studio apartment, though she's upgraded to better furniture and real curtains. Her freelance business has grown. She has steady clients, even turned down a few projects because she's busy. Elijah is thriving, happy, healthy. He talks nonstop about trains and dinosaurs and his grandma Grace, who takes him to the zoo every Saturday. Henry hasn't stopped trying, hasn't stopped showing up, hasn't stopped hoping. Some people would call him persistent, others would call him pathetic. Charlotte doesn't know what to call him, but she knows this. You can't build trust overnight. You can't erase betrayal with apologies. You can't fix a shattered mirror and expect it not to show cracks. But maybe, you can learn to live with the cracks. Learn to see beauty in the brokenness. One evening, Charlotte watches from her window as Henry walks Elijah to the car. The little boy is chattering, pointing at something in the sky, and Henry crouches down to his level, looking where he's pointing, nodding seriously. Grace appears at Charlotte's elbow, holding 2 mugs of tea. "He's a good father," she observes. "He is," Charlotte agrees. "But a terrible husband." Charlotte laughs, actually laughs. "Yeah." "Are you happy?" Grace asks. "Really?" Charlotte thinks about this, about the life she's built from nothing, about the son she's raising, about the fact that she doesn't need anyone to complete her, doesn't need anyone's validation to feel whole. "Yeah," she says. "I am." "Good." They watch as Henry buckles Elijah into his car seat, the little boy still talking animatedly. Henry glances up at the window, sees Charlotte watching, and raises a hand in a small wave. Charlotte waves back. It's not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's something. And for now, that's enough. 6 months later, Charlotte receives an email from a potential client. A big one. A tech startup in Seattle looking for a complete brand redesign. The kind of project that could change everything. Her career, her income, her life. There's just one problem. They want her to move to Seattle for 6 months to work in-house. Charlotte stares at the email for 3 days before calling a meeting. Henry comes to her apartment on a Thursday evening. Grace is already there, holding Elijah on her lap, reading him a book about a train that could. Charlotte tells them about the opportunity, about Seattle, about what it would mean for her career. "What about Elijah?" Henry asks immediately. "That's what I want to talk about. I'd need to take him with me. But you'd still get your custody time. We could do longer visits. Full weeks instead of weekends. Video calls every night." Henry's face is unreadable. 6 months? Yes. That's a long time. I know. Grace sets Elijah down. The little boy immediately runs to the bookshelf looking for another story. She turns to Henry. This is her career, Henry, her future. You don't get to hold her back. I'm not. Henry stops, runs a hand through his hair. I'm not trying to hold anyone back, Mom. I don't want to lose any more time with my son. You won't, Charlotte says. I promise. I'll make sure you don't. But I need to do this, for me, for Elijah, to build something. Henry looks at her, really looks at her, and sees what he missed 3 years ago. Sees her strength, her resilience, the fact that she doesn't need him to survive. Never did. Okay, he says quietly. Okay. Let's figure out the logistics. They spend 2 hours working out a schedule. Henry will visit Seattle once a month for extended weekends. Elijah will come back to Chicago for 2 full weeks during the 6 months. Video calls every night at 7. It's not perfect, but it works. As Henry is leaving, he pauses at the door. Charlotte? She looks up from where she's cleaning up Elijah's toys. I'm proud of you, Henry says, for what you've built, for who you are. I wanted you to know that. Charlotte feels something soften in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not quite. But something close. Thank you, she says. Henry leaves. Grace stays, helping Charlotte wash dishes while Elijah plays with blocks on the floor. You're really going to Seattle? Grace asks. I think so, yes. Good, you should. You've earned this. Charlotte smiles. Will you visit? Try to stop me. Seattle is rainy and beautiful and nothing like Chicago. Charlotte rents a small house in Fremont, near the tech company's office. The house has a yard, tiny but real, and Elijah spends hours chasing butterflies and digging in the dirt. The project is intense, challenging. Charlotte works longer hours than she has in years, but it's different now. She has support. The company provides childcare. Grace flies out twice. And Henry shows up every single month, exactly when he says he will. He stays in a hotel near Charlotte's rental house, takes Elijah to the Space Needle, to the aquarium, to Pike Place Market, where the little boy squeals with delight at the fish-throwing vendors. On Henry's 3rd visit, Charlotte invites him to dinner at the house. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. Elijah chatters about his new daycare friends while Henry helps clear the table, and for a moment, just a brief, fragile moment, it almost feels like something normal. After Elijah goes to bed, they sit on the back porch. The Seattle rain has softened to a mist. Charlotte wraps a blanket around her shoulders. You've done well here, Henry says. The city suits you. It's temporary, Charlotte reminds him. We'll be back in 3 months. Right, of course. Silence settles between them, but it's not uncomfortable, not anymore. Henry, Charlotte says finally, can I ask you something? Anything. When you got that first test result, the one that was wrong, why didn't you tell me? Why did you just believe it and keep it secret? Henry exhales slowly. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought it made me less of a man. Because my father used to say that a man who couldn't produce heirs wasn't much of a man at all. He shakes his head. Stupid, I know. But that's what I believed. And when you got pregnant, all I could think was that you'd found someone who could give you what I couldn't. But you never asked, Charlotte says quietly. You never gave me a chance to tell you the truth. No, I didn't. Henry turns to her, and in the dim porch light his eyes are wet. I let my ego and my fear destroy everything good in my life. And I know sorry doesn't fix that. I know showing up doesn't erase what I did. But Charlie, I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did to you. What I said to you. How I failed you. Charlotte pulls the blanket tighter. I know you're sorry, Henry. I've known that for a while now. But you don't forgive me. I don't know if I can. Henry nods, stands. I should go. Early flight tomorrow. Henry? Charlotte stops him. Thank you. For being a good father to Elijah. For showing up. That matters. It really does. Henry's smile is sad. It's the least I can do. He leaves. Charlotte stays on the porch, listening to the rain, thinking about broken things and whether they're ever truly fixable. The Seattle project ends successfully. Charlotte's work is featured in a tech magazine. The startup offers her a permanent position, full-time, remote, generous salary. She accepts. When she returns to Chicago, she uses her first big paycheck to move into a real apartment. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, windows that actually open. Elijah gets his own room, painted blue with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Grace helps her unpack. You've come a long way from that studio, she observes, arranging books on a shelf. We both have, Charlotte says, watching Elijah explore his new room with wonder. Henry comes for his regular custody pickup that Friday. He stands in the doorway of the new apartment, taking it all in. This is great, Charlie. Really great. Thanks. Charlotte hands him Elijah's overnight bag. He's been talking about the Children's Museum all week. He really wants to see the dinosaur exhibit. We'll go, I promise. Henry hesitates. Maybe you could come with us? If you're free? Charlotte starts to say no automatically, then stops, looks at Elijah's hopeful face, thinks about Grace's words. You don't owe him forgiveness, but you can choose peace. Okay, she says, but I'm driving separately, and we're splitting up after 2 hours. Henry's smile is genuine. Deal. The museum trip is, fine, normal. Elijah runs from exhibit to exhibit, dragging both parents along. Henry buys him a stuffed T-Rex from the gift shop. Charlotte takes approximately 40 pictures. They get ice cream after. Sit on a bench outside while Elijah makes a spectacular mess with chocolate chip. He's so much like you, Henry says, watching their son. Stubborn, determined, doesn't give up. He's like you too, charming, good with people. Throws himself into things completely. Henry laughs. Is that a compliment? I guess it is. They finish their ice cream. Charlotte wipes Elijah's face, a futile effort, and checks her watch. We should head out. Charlie, wait! Henry's voice is serious now. I know you said you don't know if you can forgive me, and I respect that. But I need to know, is there any future where we could try again? Where we could be a family? Really be one? Charlotte looks at him, at this man she once loved, who broke her heart, who has spent 3 years trying to piece it back together. I don't know, she says honestly. Right now, I can't see it. But ask me again in a year. A year? Yeah. Keep showing up. Keep being the father Elijah deserves. Keep being honest. And in a year, ask me again. It's not a yes, but it's not a no either. Henry nods slowly. Okay, 1 year. 1 year, Charlotte confirms. They part ways in the parking lot. Charlotte straps Elijah into his car seat, and as she's pulling out, she sees Henry in her rearview mirror, standing by his car, watching them leave. He looks hopeful. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The year passes. Henry doesn't push, doesn't pressure, just shows up. He attends every school event, every doctor's appointment Charlotte invites him to, every birthday party and holiday gathering. He and Charlotte develop a rhythm. They text about Elijah's schedule, his milestones, his funny comments and strange questions. Sometimes they talk on the phone, about parenting, about life, about nothing in particular. It's not dating, it's not romantic, but it's something more than just co-parenting. Grace watches this evolution with quiet satisfaction. You're softening toward him, she observes one Saturday while Elijah naps. Maybe, Charlotte admits. Or maybe I'm just tired of being angry. Anger takes energy. Forgiveness is rest. Is that from a greeting card? Grace laughs. Probably, but it's still true. Charlotte thinks about this, about how exhausting it was to carry all that hurt and betrayal, about how much lighter she feels now that she's let some of it go. I don't think I'll ever fully trust him again, she says. Not the way I did before. Maybe that's okay, Grace says. Maybe the new trust is better, earned instead of assumed. Elijah turns 4. This time the party is bigger. At a community center with a bounce house and face painting, 20 kids running wild, parents chatting in clusters, Grace managing the chaos like a general commanding troops. Henry arrives with an elaborate train set, not just wooden tracks this time, but an electric train with lights and sounds. Elijah loses his mind with joy. Charlotte watches her son and his father play together on the floor, Henry showing him how to connect the tracks, Elijah's small hands mimicking his father's movements. Something shifts in her chest. Something she's been holding tight finally loosens. After the party, after cleanup, after Elijah crashes hard from his sugar high, Charlotte walks Henry to his car. That was a good party, Henry says. You did great. We did great, Charlotte corrects. You helped. Henry smiles, pauses. It's been a year. Charlotte's heart skips. What? You told me to ask again in a year. It's been a year. She'd forgotten. Or maybe she'd deliberately not counted. But he's right. It's been exactly 1 year since that conversation at the museum. So I'm asking, Henry says, his voice steady but his eyes uncertain. Is there a future where we could try again? Where we could be a real family? Charlotte looks at him. Really looks. Sees the man who betrayed her, but also sees the man who spent 3 years proving he'd changed, who never gave up, who showed up even when she gave him nothing in return. She thinks about trust, about how it's not about grand gestures but about consistency, about how love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day. I don't know, she says finally, but I'm willing to try. Henry's breath catches. Really? Really. Slowly. Very slowly. And if you mess this up, if you ever make me feel the way you did that Thanksgiving, we're done. Forever. Do you understand? I understand. And we need counseling. Both of us. Together and separately. Okay. And Elijah comes first. Always. This isn't about us getting back together. This is about seeing if we can build something new, something better. I know. And Charlie? Henry's voice cracks. Thank you. For giving me this chance. I won't waste it. You better not. They stand in the parking lot, the evening cooling around them, and for the first time in 3 years, Henry reaches for Charlotte's hand. She lets him take it. It's not forgiveness. Not completely. But it's a beginning. 3 months later. Therapy is harder than either of them expected. They sit in a small office with neutral-colored walls and a therapist named Dr. Okafor who doesn't let them get away with anything. Henry, you say you've changed? Dr. Okafor says during one session. But change requires more than just showing up. It requires vulnerability. Charlotte needs to see not just what you're doing differently, but why. Henry shifts in his seat. I thought that's what I was doing. You're showing her your actions, but are you showing her your fear? Your shame? The parts of yourself that led to that moment at Thanksgiving? Silence. I was terrified, Henry says finally, his voice barely above a whisper. When I got that test result, I was terrified of being less than, of being insufficient. My whole life I was taught that providing, financially, physically, genetically, was what made a man valuable. And that test told me I'd failed at the most basic level. Charlotte watches him, and something in her softens. "So when I saw you were pregnant," Henry continues, "I didn't think, how is this possible? I thought, of course she found someone else, because I'm not enough. And I lashed out because attacking you was easier than admitting I felt worthless. And now," Dr. Okafor prompts, "now I know that was bullshit, that my worth isn't tied to sperm count or money or anything external, but knowing it intellectually and believing it emotionally are two different things. I'm working on it, every day." Charlotte reaches for his hand, squeezes it. They still have a long way to go, but they're going together. 6 months later. Charlotte and Henry aren't living together. That's still too much, too fast. But they're dating, actual dates, dinner, movies, long walks in Grant Park where they once got engaged. Elijah is thriving. He has 2 homes now, Charlotte's apartment and Henry's house, and he's adjusted beautifully. He knows both his parents love him. That's enough. Grace continues to visit Charlotte 3 times a week. The relationship between them has deepened into something neither expected, but both cherish. "You're good for my son," Grace tells Charlotte one evening. "You make him work for it, make him be better." "He's good for me, too," Charlotte admits. "He reminds me that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define us." Wise words from someone so young. Charlotte smiles. "I learned from the best." Grace squeezes her hand. 1 year later. Henry proposes again, not at a restaurant or in public, but in Charlotte's apartment while Elijah sleeps down the hall while they're washing dishes from dinner. "I don't need an answer now," Henry says, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I don't need an answer for a year if that's what you need. But I wanted you to have this, to know that I'm committed, that I'm in this for the long haul. Whether we get married tomorrow, or in 5 years, or never, I'm not going anywhere." Charlotte opens the box. It's not the same ring from before. This one is different, simpler. A single diamond on a thin band. "I sold the old ring," Henry explains. "Started fresh, because that's what this is, a fresh start." Charlotte looks at the ring, looks at Henry, looks toward the hallway where their son sleeps. "Ask me again in 6 months," she says. Henry smiles. Deal. 6 months later. Charlotte says yes, not because she's forgotten what happened, not because the hurt has completely healed, but because she's learned that perfection isn't the goal. Growth is, and Henry has grown. They both have. They plan a small wedding, just family, Grace, Henry's sisters, a few close friends, Elijah as the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. The night before the wedding, Charlotte lies awake in her apartment, soon to be their apartment, and thinks about the journey that brought her here. From the orphanage to the motel, from humiliation to healing, from brokenness to something resembling wholeness. She thinks about trust. How it's not about blind faith, but about earned confidence, about how loving someone doesn't mean ignoring their capacity for harm, but choosing to believe in their capacity for change. Her phone buzzes. A text from Henry. "Can't sleep. Too excited. I love you, Charlie, tomorrow and always." She smiles, types back, "Love you too. See you at the altar." The wedding. It's perfect in its imperfection. Elijah drops the rings halfway down the aisle and has to scramble to pick them up, which makes everyone laugh. Grace cries, actually cries, which she swore she wouldn't do. One of Henry's sisters gives a toast that's slightly too long and mentions embarrassing childhood stories. But when Charlotte and Henry say their vows, new vows written together, honest about the past and hopeful about the future, there's not a dry eye in the room. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you again," Henry says, his voice steady, "but I can promise I'll never stop trying to be worthy of your trust. I'll never stop showing up. I'll never stop choosing us." "I can't promise I'll always forgive easily," Charlotte responds. "But I can promise I'll always try. I'll always be honest. and I'll always believe in the possibility of new beginnings. They kiss. Elijah cheers. Grace dabs at her eyes with a tissue. It's not a fairy tale ending. It's something better. It's real. Epilogue. 3 years later. Charlotte and Henry sit on their back porch. A real house now, with a yard where Elijah, now 7, plays with his baby sister, Emma. Yes, a baby sister, born 2 years after the wedding. A surprise, but a welcome one. Grace visits weekly. She's semi-retired now, spending her time between her own life and helping with the grandchildren. She and Charlotte have coffee every Thursday morning, a ritual neither would give up for anything. "Did you ever think you'd be here?" Grace asks one Thursday, watching Elijah push Emma on a toy swing. "Here as in married to Henry again? Or here as in happy?" "Both." Charlotte considers this. "No. When he threw me out that Thanksgiving, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd always be alone, always struggling. But I learned I'm stronger than I thought. And I learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be." Grace smiles. "You've become quite philosophical in your old age." "I'm 32. Like I said, old age." They laugh. Henry comes home from work, loosens his tie, and immediately gets tackled by Elijah. Emma toddles over, arms raised, demanding to be picked up. He scoops her up, kisses her cheek, and looks over at Charlotte. She smiles at him. He smiles back. It's not the same as it was before. The trust is different. More fragile in some ways, stronger in others. They both carry scars from that Thanksgiving, from the year of separation, from the slow rebuilding. But they carry them together. And sometimes, that makes all the difference. Final thoughts. Years from now, when Elijah is older and asks about how his parents got together, they'll tell him an edited version. They'll talk about falling in love, about challenges, about working through hard times. But the full story, the betrayal, the accusation, the year of separation, that's a story for another time. For when he's old enough to understand that love isn't always simple, that trust, once broken, requires constant maintenance to rebuild, that family isn't about perfection but about showing up, even when it's hard. Charlotte sometimes thinks about that Thanksgiving, about the moment Henry laughed and called her a liar, about the medical report thrown on the table like evidence of her sin, and she still feels a twinge, a small ache in her chest. But then she looks at her life now, at her children, at her career, at the man who spent years proving he'd changed, at the mother-in-law who became more than family, who became a friend. And she thinks maybe that Thanksgiving, as terrible as it was the breaking that needed to happen before anything could truly be rebuilt. You can't build a strong foundation on unexamined ground. Sometimes you have to tear everything down to see what's really underneath. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, what you build from the rubble is stronger than what came before. Charlotte and Henry will never have the naive trust of their first marriage. They'll never have that innocent belief that love conquers all without work. But they have something better. Realistic hope. Earned trust. A partnership built not on assumptions but on daily choices. Is it perfect? No. Is it real? Yes. And in the end, real is better than perfect, every time. One final scene. Elijah is 8 now. He finds an old photo album in the attic. Pictures from before Emma was born, before the second wedding, from those early days of the first marriage. He brings it to Charlotte in the kitchen. "Mom, why aren't there many pictures from when I was a baby?" Charlotte's hand still over the cutting board. She looks at the album, at the sparse pages from those first 2 years of Elijah's life. "That was a complicated time," she says carefully. "Were you and Dad fighting?" "Yes, we were. But you're not fighting now." "Not much," Charlotte says with a small smile. Elijah considers this. "My friend Marcus says his parents fight all the time and then they're okay." He says that's normal. It is normal. Fighting isn't the problem. It's how you fight, and whether you fix things after. Did you and Dad fix things? Charlotte sits down at the table, pulls Elijah onto her lap even though he's getting too big for it. We tried really hard, and we're still trying, every day. That's good, Elijah says. Then, with the casual wisdom of children, I'm glad you kept trying. Charlotte hugs him tight. Me too, baby, me too. That evening, after the kids are in bed, Charlotte tells Henry about the conversation. He asked about the missing photos, she says. Henry winces. What did you say? That it was complicated. That we were fighting, but we fixed it. Did we fix it? Charlotte looks at him. Are we fixed? No, we're both still works in progress. But are we better? Yes. Are we committed? Yes. Is that enough? Henry pulls her close. It's enough for me. Me too. They stand in their kitchen, holding each other, and think about everything it took to get here. The pain, the growth, the forgiveness that came in small increments rather than grand gestures. Recovery isn't linear. Healing isn't quick. Trust isn't easily rebuilt. But love, real love, is patient. And sometimes that patience is rewarded, not with perfection, but with something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. Charlotte and Henry learned that the hard way, but they learned it, and that's what matters. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone? How did you do it? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about real people navigating the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of relationships. Because life isn't a fairy tale, and that's exactly what makes it worth living.